Hello, what's up, y'all? Hey, this is your boy Omson the Way. What's going on, guys? Well, I pray and hope that this message reaches y'all in the best of health and in the best of spirit. In this video today, I want to speak about viruses. I want to speak about viruses, in particular, viruses on the African continent. As you guys know, Africa has been the hotspot of viruses for as long as we can remember. Whenever there's a virus outbreak, it must have taken place on the African continent. To the point that many people feels like are the Africans cursed? Why the viruses always have to choose the African black people? Why? Why our viruses have to always choose the African black people? Why virus has to always choose the black African countries for outbreak? Why? There is a reason for it, and the reason for this is that the viruses are not like viruses came out of nature. No, they are not viruses came from monkeys or from bats or from whatever animal they have ever told you. These are viruses escaped from the hundreds of European and USA bioweapon labs that exists on the African continent. Bioweapon labs are laboratories where diseases are invented, where they invent diseases. You understand? So most of the diseases that exist today are invented in these bioweapon labs, especially those existing on the African continent, because only we Africans accept every bullshit. You understand? We have proven ourselves to be naive and passive throughout history, to the point that today nobody has any respect for us or for our continent. Our continent is just like a no man's land where any outsider can go and do whatever bullshit that they wish to do. You understand? From exploiting the people, inventing diseases and killing the people, using the people as lab rats. You understand? For new diseases or viruses they invent. You see? So I have come across this article. You understand? I mean, this is something that I already have been suspicious of. You understand? For like a long time, I have been asking myself questions. Why always in Africa that viruses have to be outbroken? Why it is always in Africa this disease, that disease, this virus, that virus? Why? Well, normally Africa is a hot place where viruses don't survive. Well, normally genetically the Africans' systems or genes fights off every virus that comes out of nature. Why then viruses are always in Africa, always killing Africans thousands and dozens? You understand? So this article today, when I read this article, it opened my eyes to a lot of things that I didn't know about my own Africa. It has given answer to many of my questions as to how viruses have to always outbreak only in Africa. Why viruses have to always appear only in black Africa. Why? Why Africans are the ones who have to always die of viruses, new viruses, unknown viruses. Why? This article made me understand why is Africa. I got to understand through this article that these viruses are not out now. Let us dive into the article. Like I was saying earlier, this article is about the United States of America and its European allies bioweapon warfare work on the African continent. This article speaks about not only their bioweapon work on the African continent, but this article speaks also on the countries in which or in the countries in which the United States of America and its European allies do have bioweapon laboratories inventing or studying deadly diseases. You understand? for which sometimes they have to sacrifice the lives of a lot of Africans, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Africans. Sometimes they sacrifice to test the efficacy of these viruses they invent, or to test the efficacy of the bioweapon they invent, virus or disease, etc., etc., or just a poison that they can spread in the air. Sometimes on the African continent, they sacrifice thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people, to test these demonic bioweapons they invent. In this article, you will have an answer to most of your questions regarding diseases on the African continent, regarding viruses and how they spread on the African continent, and also regarding, like I was saying earlier, even the countries in which the bioweapon labs of Europe and America are planted in the African continent. In this article here, you will understand or get to know the root cause or the root of most virus or disease outbreaks on the African continent. As you guys know, Africa, they have turned Africa into like a cursed land. You understand? To the point that wherever that you go as African people, the first thing they see you as is someone who is sick. You understand? Someone who is poor, someone who is sick. You understand? Everything that is negative is associated with you, and it is all caused by these European politicians, and they are American allies. You see, you will have an answer to all the disease outbreaks that has ever taken place on the African continent. This article says, in the early 21st century, new concerns about bioweapons being used to generate terror, and also with a series of newly emerging or newly understood disease-causing microbes have resulted in infections and deaths of workers studying these microbes in the laboratories. Generally, to gain understanding and to develop treatments and vaccines, here are 5 examples to summarize. First, smallpox virus escaped from a UK laboratory where it was being maintained and stored. In 2014, infections and deaths of 5 researchers who were isolating a West African Ebola virus for deoxyribonucleic acid, a DNA sequencing epidemiology studies, and 2 recent infections that happened in the same USA laboratory where researchers were infected with agents causing septicemic, Yersinia plague, and Bacillus anthrax, and the 2012 in California from a laboratory infection by Neisseria meningitidis, resulting in spinal meningitis. Beginning March 2014, a devastating Ebola outbreak in West Africa caused widespread suffering and damaged fragile public health systems. The nations of Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone were hit hard by this crisis. The deadliest Ebola outbreak in recorded history, with more than 10,000 lives lost. The recent outbreak of Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo occurred last May close to an American laboratory in Uganda near the DRC border, near the border of Uganda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. The last Ebola outbreak that took place in Congo, it took place in an area where one American bioweapon laboratory for Ebola studies and Ebola invention is planted. The number of victims was insignificant in comparison with the disaster of 2014 in West Africa. However, several USA companies were suggesting that vaccines against this virus were developed by them. Conspiracy theorists says that Ebola is bioweapon created by the West and with the main aim or with the main goal of depopulating Africa. And these claims refuse to die. There must be some truths in these claims. Leaks from within Western establishments and the behavior of these capitalist powers fool the theorists. They are difficult to ignore. The number of American research laboratories working on protection against bioterrorism has increased from 20 to 400 over the last 10 years. Most of these centers appeared in Africa. America, just for the past 10 years, where before 10 years ago, America was only having 20 bioweapon laboratories. But in the period of the past 10 years, America went from having only 20 bioweapon laboratories to having 400. And most of these 400 laboratories are planted on the African continent. Most of these American laboratories and European bioweapon laboratories, where they create viruses, diseases, to kill people, to destroy people, in order for them to keep controlling people, in order for their pharmaceutical companies to make money out of the suffer of the black people, out of the suffer of Africans. These laboratories are planted in our countries in Africa that we don't even know about. You still doubt that these people don't have any respect for our life and our existence? Do you still believe anything these people tell you about liberty, equality, humanity, and democracy? You still believe any of that bullshit? The countries where these bioweapon laboratories are mostly located is Nigeria, Kenya, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Tanzania, Uganda, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea-Conakry, and also, but only one exists in Egypt, because the Arab countries didn't accept. Only Egypt has accepted one, you understand, and only one of this Assisi became president of Egypt, that he accepted so that he can have favors from the United States of America. You understand? And that's why, as you can see, the United States of America that always speaks against military leadership. They never speak about Egypt's military leadership. They never speak against it. You understand? Because that military men in ruling Egypt has given them the favor of planting their bioweapon laboratory there, endangering the lives of the people of Egypt. But it is the only Arab country on the African continent that has accepted this bullshit, this mess. It's only the black African countries who accept every mess from every people. And you wonder why nobody respects you. USA government agencies have a long history of carrying out allegedly defensive biological warfare research at labs in Liberia and Sierra Leone. For a long time, Liberia and Sierra Leone has been two countries where the United States of America and its European allies have a lot of bioweapon activities going on. So any disease you see in these countries, any virus you see in this country, you should understand that it came from the labs. You should understand that these viruses were invented by European scientists, European politicians, the European military industry, in collaboration with the European pharmaceutical companies, to be making money at the expense of the Liberians and the Sierra Leone people and the African people generally. Because if a virus catch the Sierra Leone person, it will catch me, Malian. It will catch another person. We are all connected to each other's African. The danger of one is the danger of all of us. So the United States of America and its agencies and the Europeans have always used Liberia and Sierra Leone for their bioweapon development and for their bioweapon activities in general, without the people ever know. Sierra Leone people don't know about this. Liberian people don't know about this. It is just an agreement signed between American officials and the officials of these two countries. You see, when I hear Joe Biden talk about democracy, human rights, and humanity, you should peer on him. I understand. You should peer on him. He's a liar. He's a deceiver. Because while he's preaching democracy and liberty and humanity, he's practicing devilishness in the darkness and behind closed doors against the African people, against black people. Government agencies have a long history of carrying out allegedly defensive biological warfare research at labs in Liberia and in Sierra Leone. This includes the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, which is now the point agency for managing the Ebola spill over into the US. It seems to me that what we are dealing with here is a biological warfare work that was conducted at a biowarfare laboratories set up by the USA and its European allies on the west coast of Africa. And if you look at a map produced by the CDC, you can see where these laboratories are located. And they are across the heart of Ebola epidemic at the west coast of Africa. The article says, if you look at the map of where these bioweapon laboratories of the United States of America and its European allies are located in Western Africa, where these bioweapon laboratories are located is the places where Ebola outbreak took place. This says a lot of things. This says a lot of things. You already have an answer to all your questions regarding why Africa is always the hot spot for viruses. You already have an answer to that question. Need I to explain more? So I think, he continues, so I think these laboratories, one or more of them, are the origins of the Ebola epidemic. Of course, I agree with you 100%, brother. You are right. These laboratories are the origins of not only the Ebola, but any disease and virus that existed and exists today on the African continent. Laboratory acquired viral and bacterial infections in research facilities happen, although less common than infections of clinical workers handling patient samples. Infections of researchers with serious pathogens can lead to death. This is an increasing problem as governments of USA and technically advanced nations, European nations, have increased research on potential bioterrorism agents, and as concerns have grown about capture of such bioweapons by rogue nations and non-government groups. With all the latest news on the spreading outbreak understandably giving rise to public fear and panic that it is just a plane ride away now, millions, if not billions, on this planet are pondering whether the African pandemic might be rapidly turning into a global epidemic spreading to every corner of the earth. Of course, to reduce these concerns, the World Health Organization, WHO, and the US government are busily downplaying the risks to citizens here in North America. Specific character of Ebola spreading and high lethality of the virus allows to kill people, selectively targeting villages, sites, or countries. And if a state, for a case of enforcing circumstance, already has a developed and tested vaccine, then a biological war might be very fast and successful. The U.S. Department of Defense, DoD, is funding Ebola trials on humans, trials which started just weeks before the Ebola outbreak in Guinea and Sierra Leone. The reports continue and state that the DoD gave a contract with worth $140 million to Tecmira, a Canadian pharmaceutical company, to conduct Ebola research. This research work involved injecting and infusing healthy humans with the deadly Ebola virus, which started in January 2014, shortly before an Ebola epidemic was declared in West Africa in March. So developing biological weapons from collecting monstrously lethal specimens of the Ebola virus should come as no surprise, or when considering this already long and extensive U.S. military history, repeatedly guilty of human slaughter on such mammoth and unprecedented scale, it should not be so shocking to realize the military purpose of Ebola as yet another highly destructive weapon in its vast lethal arsenal could be potentially used to eliminate an enormous segment of this planet's readily expendable current human population in Africa. In bringing the two Ebola-infected Americans back from West Africa to the CDC back in 2014, in addition to optimizing their survival chance, the other all too obvious explanation is to harvest their Ebola cells, listen carefully, is to harvest their Ebola cells for extraction that will then be used to patent the most deadly strain ever known to man. Then for what reason the US needs the patient? There are two theories worked out, by the way, by American experts. One of them describes mass panic after casual virus leakage from laboratories. It is followed by outbreak of the disease in a city, a country, or the world. And it doesn't even matter that there is no epidemic at all. No doubt the US government is highly invested in Ebola for both potential profits, developing a vaccine, as well as for a potential final solution as a convenient biowarfare global population killer. Speaking of profits, Tecmira Pharmaceuticals, the Canadian pharmaceutical company, a pharmacological company, appears during the mass hysteria and presents prepared vaccine. Did you just hear that? Did you just hear that? Tecmira Pharmaceuticals, a pharmacological company, appears during the mass hysteria, and it presents prepared vaccine. They said we have a vaccine to this. You understand? Like I said before, they create the virus, they spread it. You understand? And once they see that people are now in fear, people are scared, nobody wants to die, they come forward and tell the people, we have a solution to this, your fear. We have a vaccine to this virus that's killing you, that might kill you, your father or your loved ones. What will you do? You will go and buy the vaccine and get vaccinated. So this is how they work. The drug is being bought by millions of peoples, as well as governments, and somebody, after developing medicine against local virus, gets huge benefits. It is really not a big jump to suspect that the military has also been doing research on Ebola as a bioweapon. It is a stable nature in aerosol, make it attractive as a potential biological weapon. What better place to develop such thing than in Africa, where nobody holds anyone accountable for whatever they might do against the African people? Since the African leaders themselves, they are a greedy, immoral, and senseless people who puts only their own personal interests and their seats, and they are staying in power before everything else. There is no smoking gun here, but one can certainly draw dots around the facts that suggest us. The US military and the European military industry, the United States scientists, the European scientists, the United States politicians and the European politicians were in fact the bad actors in the Ebola cases and in the cases of many viruses or many virus outbreaks on the African continents that has claimed the lives of thousands and hundreds of thousands of African men, women, and children. So this was the article. We have come to the end of this article. I hope that you guys have learned a lot of new things from this article. I hope that we Africans one day own this our continent. I hope that one day we Africans wake up and start seeing this world as it really is, especially these European politicians and the USA politicians. I hope we wake up one day and start seeing them as they really are.